Moving charge codes, once a charge is posted in Rover, we have a couple different ways that we can move them. Option one is that we can always utilize the bill number and move something to a bill, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Or we can select a single charge or in multiple charges and use the option to move charges. And this option will give us two different things. It will allow us to move it within a guest folio, but as well will allow us to move it to another guest or another account. So I'm going to take us into the Wexford Bay Hotel, which is one of our lovely sites we use for different things, and give us some examples of where we go to that. So if I'm looking at our lovely departures and I have Daryl here, if I look at Daryl's charges, I can go through and he has a whole series of charges out there. And so we have $2,000 and change in our bill and charges. Now, as you may recall from session one, we talked about when you create charge groups that they're going to go into that when you create a charge code that you're going to put into a charge group, and those charge groups bring up those charges and are going to bring things into these areas for our initial setup and our initial ability to see a lump sum items. So now, as I was mentioning, there's two different ways that we can move charges. We can use option one, which is going to be move it to a different bill from here, and that's using the bill number column. And it's always going to go to us and show us that we can set up, I've got this to go to a new bill. And in this particular case, this is a room charge that has generated taxes, as we've kind of talked about setting up generated taxes in the first one. So when I move this item, it's going to move the charge itself as well as the taxes. So I moved that to bill 2, and if I look, I moved that to bill 2, and we have now moved that along with the associated taxes with it. So it's going to move all of the items at the same time. At the similar basis, if I needed to do something different and I needed to adjust off this state tax, I could as well move that to a bill 3 and move just that one item. Anytime you move a generated item, an item that has generates on it, and such as the taxes, it's going to move those taxes along with it. The other way that we can move an item, as I said, is that we can click the orange the box on the far right side and click multiple charges in the same way and get a different guest, and we could move to one of our bills that we already have, or I could move this to a completely different account, move it to a different person that's in-house, and I can move this to Clay's room and say that I need to put this to bill 1, and this will move those charges completely over to that new account that I moved to. Now, for your tracking purposes, and just because we like to check on them, if I look at Clay's account, which is where I moved that to in room 309 here, when I look at those charges that have been moved, we are going to put on that description that these charges came and were transferred from Daryl's reservation and go that way. So these will show here in the folio for you that you can see. As well, this information will print out on the guest invoice when they go to it, so they know that this was something that was not necessarily directly from their room. So whether you're using the bill functionality to move them or moving them via the click checkbox and then clicking to move them, whether it's to another bill within there or, as I said, another account or guest. From there, I want to talk about billing groups and grouping of charges. And I wanted to talk about a couple different things in setup that I've learned and we've been playing with it. Bill and charges are set up, are the billing groups that we can allow and attach to routing for things are going to be set up initially in the back end in settings, financials, and billing groups is where you'll find them. And you'll see the listing of what's already created for your hotel or hotels. And these can be edited and changed and updated. Simply use the Add New button. It's going to populate a new clean spot for us, and we can name it what we want. And we can then select the charges that we want to utilize and what's going to go there. In this particular one, I happen to call it room and tax, and we've set it as room charges going there. One of the things I've learned and I've started playing with most recently in a couple different instances, and something that goes back to that first charge when we were talking about setting up that when you transfer a room charge or anything else that has a generate on it, that those subsequent charges are going to go for the same thing. So if you have items that go from there, it's always going to do it. So in some ways, I've started going for things and saying, if I do a new grouping that's going to be room charges, I can go through and I can find what I want to charge and say that I only want the room charge. I do not need to specify the taxes, because that will do is that if those same taxes are used for something else, it's not going to move those at the same time, because it's only going to move the items that are done posted with that initial room charge. So that allows us to do some things if we're doing some tax exempt to say, I need to set room charge is going to go to bill 2, and then I want to send the taxes that I want to set up and say that I'm going to do my taxes, and I'm going to be able to end up saying that I've got my 7 1/4 and my occupancy taxes and my parking taxes. Those are going to get billed to window 3 or bill 3, and I'm going to adjust those off. So a couple different things that we can do with billing groups. These can be updated at any time, and anytime you update it, it is going to update for all the future billings and anything else that's on there. So once again, these are set up from our settings in financials in billing groups. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense and helps you all understand some of the billing group options that we can do. You can have as many billing groups as you want. If you ever want to have one that is all charges, you can always simply check this first box, all charges, and it will automatically check everything for you. If you do add new posting codes, though, note that that's not going to update it. It's only going to have checked all the charges at that time. So if you know you set up an all charges at the very beginning of your creation of your hotel, and 6 months into the way, you say, I need a new a charge code to post my minibar charges or something else, or you break something out, you need to go back in and add that to the all charges. It will not update automatically. The last thing I wanted to talk to was talking about some permissions for charges, because these go through and have some different impacts. And these are the ability to set to split charges, to edit charges, to delete charges, and to edit the code description. All of these are powerful and very usable. I'm a big proponent that almost every person should have the ability to split charges, because that'll take a charge and split it in half for other different ways that we want to do. We'll talk about that and show you that in a moment. Edit charges will allow us to make a change to a charge. So that charge that was originally posted as $200, we could split that out, and we need to make an adjustment to it and say, I only want to make this now $150. It will set an adjustment amount on that same transaction code of a credit there in a $50 amount. And if there's generates, we'll post those generated taxes on it as well. We can always edit charges. If people have the permission, regardless of when it was posted, it will post, but the new adjustment and that change in revenue will impact the date that the edit is made revenue. It will not go back and update the previous dates, because that date has already been closed and audited. The other one that we can use here that I'm not a huge proponent of, I think if it's done, it should be done sparingly, but that's always each hotel's choice, is the remove charge. Remove charge takes that charge directly off of the bill. In the journal, we do see that charge reversed. We see that charge reversed on the day that it was actually reversed. So a charge could have been posted previously, but if we delete it or remove it, it will show up in the journal and have a credit and offset posting on the current business date. And the last one is the custom description, which allows people to customize or change the transaction of what was really posted. So if I go back into Daryl's room again and use that as an example, I'm going to use that for each of these different items and show you a couple different things that happen with it. All of those are done through the purple pencil of the item. So anytime we click on that purple pencil, if I look at this first room charge, I'm going to use that first one I talked about of splitting it. And when I split it, it will allow me to do it by either a percentage or an amount. So if I leave it as dollar, it's going to show that it's going to split the $200 charge into a $50 and $150, and we'll post the taxes accordingly. Or I can do that as a percentage and change it, and it will split it as two different $100 transactions. For right now, I'm going to leave it as $1 just to show it that way. When I split that charge, it's going to keep it. It splits the charge and goes through, and we now have a $150 transaction here, and it's put it down at the bottom. We also have our $50 transaction, and it kept the original date of it because we haven't really changed the posting. It's just split it in half in a portion of it. So we can do that first one. The second one we can do, as I said, is the similar way, is the edit. And if I use this new charge here on the 9th, and if I go in here and I edit it, and I say that I need to edit the charge, that I now want it to be a $100 charge for guest satisfaction, it will show that there will show here as a $100 credit. As we notice that when I change the amount, this charge on the 9th is not going to have any change to it other than we're going to show that we've got an adjustment. And at the bottom here, because it's going to go on today's business date, here is a $100 credit posting of it, showing that it's an adjustment for it, and as well it posted the taxes that were associated with that. The other things that hits with there, as I said, is the delete option or the remove. And if I take this charge on the 10th, I can come in here and remove this charge, and it will ask me why. And it will go through and it will remove the charge from the guest. It is going on here. I'll take you to the journal in just a moment where we'll show it, but that charge is completely removed. It will not show on the guest folio. And before we go to that last one, I'm going to use the other one that we can do, is if I look at this charge here, this is currently posted as food and beverage charge. I can come in here and use this custom description that I want to change this to say that it is actually our coffee shop that was utilized. And so we can edit the description. What we'll show on the guest folio is what our new description is. We'll still see the original charge code. There's nothing there. On our back side, we will see the lovely purple pencil here showing that we did make a change in the description to that, but we didn't make any actual physical change to the codes. And what, like I said, what would show on the guest bill will be the coffee shop, not the food and beverage one. And then just to show you a couple of quick things, if I look in our journal for today's transactions, you'll see the edits and changes that we did. If I go to today's date, if I look at our revenue, our room is going to have our $240. We have this first charge that was edited, so we have the credit of that $80 credit that comes here. And I'm going to assume, I apologize, I didn't check what was all posting with this there. This has some package elements, so it's kind of removing some other package elements and going there, which is why it's not showing the full 160 or the full 100 there, because it will still look at all the package elements that you utilized and things that way. So these are going through here. The other things don't necessarily change. We didn't, the other split isn't going to go from there. We would see that on the day. If we went to, I think it was the 6th of July, our room charge should show a split out now. We do have end of day here. Here was the 120 and a $40 split, and that's breaking out the rest of the taxes that get associated with it. So there's lots of little things that come into a play when you're adjusting a rate and going from there. But as I said, those are all permission driven. You have the ability to change what's going through there. These are on a per person basis or a per user ID. There is another grouping in there that was originally tied all of them together, edit, split, delete charges. I strongly recommend that you unassign that from anybody, and if you have somebody who needs to use those items, that you actually grant those permissions to the user groups directly.